Last autumn, I decided to clear out some old furniture before moving to a new apartment. Among the things I wanted gone was a heavy oak dresser that had belonged to the previous tenant. It wasn't ugly, just enormous, too big for the narrow bedroom in my small place on Willow Lane, Vermont. I listed it online for cheap. Within an hour, I got a message from a man named Mark. He wrote, "I'll take it. I can pick up tonight if that works." We agreed he'd come by around 8. That evening, the sky was already fading to a cold blue when his white van pulled up outside. Mark looked like he was in his late 30s, tall and wiry, with pale hair that stuck out from under a baseball cap. He smiled as I opened the door, but there was something off about it. Too wide, too forced. "Nice place," he said, stepping inside before I could invite him. "Where's the dresser?" I led him down the short hallway to the bedroom. He ran his hand along the wood grain, nodding approvingly. "Solid piece," he said. "You don't see many like this anymore." We both grabbed an end and wrestled it toward the door. He insisted on taking the heavier side, which I appreciated until I realized how easily he lifted it. When we got it to the van, he asked if I could help slide it in. As we maneuvered the dresser, I noticed the back panel had a set of faint scratches, parallel marks, almost like fingernails. I brushed it off as old wear and tear. When we were done, I wiped my hands and thanked him. "Glad it's going to a good home," I said. Mark grinned again, that same unnatural stretch of teeth. "Oh, I'm sure we'll get plenty of use out of it," he replied, voice low and oddly deliberate. Something about the wee sent a shiver down my spine, though I laughed it off and wished him a good night. As his van drove away, I felt strangely relieved, as if a weight had been lifted. Not just the dresser, but a heaviness I hadn't realized was clinging to the room. That relief didn't last. Around midnight, I woke to the sound of a vehicle idling outside. I peeked through the blinds. A white van sat across the street, lights off, engine humming faintly in the chill air. I told myself it couldn't be Mark, maybe a delivery truck or someone lost. But when I looked again 10 minutes later, it was still there. I finally worked up the nerve to check a third time. The street was empty. I tried to sleep, but my mind replayed every detail of our interaction. The way he'd stepped inside uninvited, the scratches on the back of the dresser, the deliberate way he'd said we. The next evening, just after sunset, there was a knock at my door. My stomach dropped. Through the peephole, I saw Mark standing there, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, a thin smile plastered on his face. I didn't open the door. "Can I help you?" I called through the wood. "Hey," he said casually. "I think I left something in the dresser drawers when I loaded it. Mind if I check?" I hesitated. "You emptied them before we carried it out." "Yeah," he said, his voice tightening. "But I want to make sure." Something about his tone made every hair on my arms stand up. I stayed silent, hoping he'd go away. After a long pause, he spoke again, softer this time. "I know you're in there." That was enough. I stepped back, heart hammering, and dialed the police. When I returned to the peephole, he was gone. The officers arrived 20 minutes later, but Mark and the van had vanished. They took a report and promised to patrol the neighborhood, though they admitted there wasn't much to be done unless he came back. I barely slept that night, jumping at every creak of the old floorboards. At dawn, I finally dozed off, only to jolt awake to the faint sound of someone moving just outside my window. I froze, straining to listen. A slow scraping noise drifted through the glass, followed by a low chuckle. I leapt out of bed, grabbed my phone, and hissed to the dispatcher that someone was outside. By the time officers arrived again, the yard was empty. In the damp soil beneath the window, though, they found shoe prints, large, boot-shaped impressions leading toward the trees behind the house. 2 days later, I arranged to stay with a friend until my move. The night before I left, curiosity got the better of me. I searched local listings for the dresser. There it was, posted by another seller in a nearby town. The photo showed it sitting in a dimly lit garage. In the background, barely visible, stood Mark. His head was turned toward the camera, but his eyes weren't on the lens. They were looking at me, as though he knew I'd find the picture. I reported the ad and forwarded the image to the police, but the post disappeared within hours. I moved out the next morning, leaving Willow Lane behind. Yet sometimes, when I close the curtains at night, I swear I hear a vehicle engine purring softly in the dark, or the faint scrape of fingernails against old oak. 2 summers ago, I was living in a cramped studio apartment on Briar Alley in Brooklyn. The building was old. Creaky floors, radiators that hissed through the night, walls thin enough that I could hear my neighbor arguing with his girlfriend over which takeout to order. Rent was cheap, though, and for someone fresh out of college, that was all that mattered. At the time, I didn't own a television. I'd been surviving on a laptop propped against a stack of books, streaming shows whenever the internet decided to cooperate. One sticky July evening, after my shift at the coffee shop, I decided to browse online classifieds for something bigger. Most ads were overpriced or obviously scams, but one caught my eye. Free 55-inch flat screen. Pick up tonight. Works great, just upgrading. The photo showed a sleek TV on a plain wooden stand. The seller, someone named Mara, had posted only an address, 317 Briar Alley, apartment 2B. That was just 3 blocks from me. I messaged her and she replied instantly, "Come by before 9. Elevator's out, but it's light for its size. Just text when you're close." By 8:15 I was at the building, a red brick tenement squeezed between 2 boarded-up storefronts. A single dim bulb flickered over the entrance. I texted Mara here. She wrote back, "Doors open, come up to 2B." The stairwell smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic. The hallway on the second floor was silent except for the faint hum of an air conditioner somewhere down the line. Apartment 2B's door was ajar. I knocked. "Hello? Mara?" No answer. I pushed the door a little farther. The apartment was dark except for the faint glow of a TV screen against the far wall. On it, static flickered and danced in gray and white fuzz. "Mara!" I tried again, stepping inside. The place looked staged, like no one really lived there. Bare walls, no furniture except the stand and the television. I felt a twinge of unease, but reminded myself people selling stuff online are often awkward about in-person handoffs. Maybe she was shy or in another room. The TV was huge, its screen glossy even through the static. As I got closer, I realized the snow wasn't random. It pulsed in strange patterns, almost like ripples moving outward from a center point. A whisper of sound emerged, low and indistinct. I bent nearer, thinking maybe it was a weak signal. That's when I saw something that froze me. Behind the static, just faintly, there was an image, a dim room, and in that room stood a man. He was tall and thin, wearing a dark coat, head slightly bowed. His face was obscured, but I could feel his eyes on me. A sudden pop made me jump back. The screen went black. My own reflection stared at me, pale and wide-eyed. I spun toward the doorway. Still no sign of Mara. My phone buzzed with a text. "Do you like it?" I typed, "Where are you?" No reply. A floorboard creaked behind me. I whirled. Nothing but shadows pooling in the far corner where the kitchen should have been. I decided I'd had enough. I backed toward the door, keeping my eyes on that silent TV. Just as I reached the threshold, the screen flared to life again. Only this time it wasn't static. It was me. The screen showed my back as I edged toward the exit, every movement perfectly mirrored. My stomach dropped. There was a camera somewhere in the room, feeding the image live. The view widened slightly, revealing a tall shape standing in the dark kitchen behind me. I spun around, heart slamming. The corner looked empty, but the shadows were thick, too thick for the faint light from the hall. Then something shifted, just enough for me to know I wasn't alone. I bolted. My shoes skidded on the hallway's worn linoleum as I sprinted down the stairs and out into the street. I didn't stop until I was halfway home, lungs burning, phone slick in my hand. Once inside my apartment, I locked the door, shoved a chair under the knob, and tried to calm down. Maybe it had been some bizarre prank. Still shaking, I reported the ad and the address on the classified site. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I went back in daylight. Apartment 2B's door was closed, but a fresh city notice was taped to it. Condemned, do not enter. According to the landlord downstairs, no one had lived in 2B for years. The place had been empty since a fire damaged part of the floor. That night, I was half asleep when a faint buzz woke me. My phone screen glowed with a new text from an unknown number. You looked good on camera. I threw the phone across the room and lay awake until dawn, every muscle tense, waiting for another message, or for the man in the coat to step out of the shadows. This all happened about 3 years ago when I was living in a small apartment complex in Ashford, Oregon. I was 24 at the time, working a dead-end job at a shipping warehouse and, like most people my age, constantly broke. My apartment was sparsely furnished with a mix of hand-me-downs and cheap stuff I'd bought myself. The centerpiece of my living room was a truly hideous love seat that the previous tenant had left behind. The fabric was stained, one spring was broken, and it smelled faintly of old cigarettes. I hated it. For months, I'd been dreaming of getting a real couch, something I could actually stretch out on. The problem was that I couldn't afford one. So I did what any broke person does. I scoured Craigslist, especially the free section. Mostly it was a sea of junk. Broken appliances, stained mattresses, and warped firewood. But I checked it religiously every day, hoping for a miracle. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I saw it. The ad was titled simply, "Free Couch, Must Pick Up." The picture showed a large dark gray sectional. It wasn't brand new, but it looked clean and modern. 1,000 times better than what I had. The description read, "Good condition, no pets, no smoking. Need it gone by this weekend." It was located in the Blackthorn Road area, about 30 minutes east into a rural stretch where houses were hidden behind tall fir trees. I didn't care about the drive. I immediately replied to the email, saying I had a truck and could pick it up that evening. I didn't actually have a truck, but my buddy Caleb did, and I knew I could borrow his for pizza and a six-pack. To my surprise, I got a reply within 10 minutes. "Tonight works great. Address is 42 Blackthorn Road. Let me know when you're on your way. David." Ecstatic, I called Caleb, grabbed the keys to his old Ford Ranger, and headed out as the sun bled orange across the hills. The further I got from town, the more the road narrowed. Houses became scarce, separated by weeds and leaning barns. By the time I turned onto Blackthorn Road, the sky was nearly black. The GPS said I'd arrived, but I had to inch along, peering at faded mailbox numbers. The address sat at the end of a gravel driveway. A single-story ranch house slouched behind weeds and rusting farm tools. A dim yellow bulb glowed beside the front door. The whole place gave me a weird chill, but I told myself maybe the guy was just messy. I'd come this far. I wasn't leaving without the couch. I parked, headlights slicing through the gloom, illuminating the sectional on the porch. It looked just like the photo. I texted David, "Hey, I'm here in the Ranger." A moment later, the door creaked open. 2 men stepped out, not one. Both were big, late 30s, shaved heads. One wore a grimy white t-shirt, the other a black hoodie. They didn't smile. "You the guy for the couch?" The one in the t-shirt grunted. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Thanks for this, man. You're saving me." "I'm Dave," he said. "This is my brother, Rick." Rick just stared, hands buried in his hoodie pocket, eyes flat and unreadable. "Okay, if one of you wants to help, we can load it quick," I offered. "We'll both help," Dave said, more command than offer. As we lifted the couch, I noticed how unnaturally light it was, almost hollow. We carried it to the truck. Then Dave said, "Cushions are inside. We brought them in so they wouldn't get dusty. Come help grab them." I hesitated. Sure. Where are they?" A week after, I spotted Rick across a grocery store lot, staring. 3 long seconds before he vanished behind a dumpster. I fled to the police again. They promised extra patrols, but there wasn't much else they could do. I moved apartments soon after. Still, every so often, I wake at night convinced I hear footsteps in the hall, or a couch spring squeaking softly in the dark.